Hey everyone, welcome back to Commander Attacks. I'm Adam and it's Friday. So today we're doing another new series. Today we are looking at 12 underrated commander cards. These are 12 commander cards that I had in my commander decks that I felt when I played them people were underestimating or undervaluing. So let's get into it. I'll talk a little bit about my commander deck that I have this in because it may be relevant, and then from there we will get into why I think each of these cards is underrated. The cards I want to talk about first are part of my Agatha the Vile Cauldron deck. Agatha is a green-red warlock human, and activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less, where X is equal to her power. So the more powerful she is, or the more power that she has, the less expensive the activated costs of your creatures are. So this has a bunch of expensive activated abilities on creatures. And basically the card that I want to talk about today is actually Gruff Triplets. And it has nothing to do with activated abilities, actually. What it is it feeds into the +1/+1 counter strategy that we use to pump up Agatha. So Gruff Triplets, when it comes into play, it creates two copies of itself. It's a trampling 3/3. When one of them dies, it gets counters equal to the power of the one that died. If one dies, then the other two get +3/+3. Well, because we are in a +1/+1 counter theme, we can make all of our Gruff Triplets, 5/5, 6/6s, 7/7s. So when one dies, the other two get immensely more powerful. And because they have trample, they become a serious threat. And that means that you can't just remove one, you have to remove all three of them at the same time. If you leave even just one of them, then it's going to trample through and do huge amounts of damage. Usually when I play this card, I think I'm going to win. All right, so the next card that we have is actually Xenagos the Reveler. It's a green and a red, and it's a planeswalker, and it's got a +1 that says add X mana of any combination of red and green, where X is the number of creatures you control. Normally when you play this, you already have a few creatures and you're going to get an immediate benefit. If you don't, though, you get to create 2/2 blockers or 2/2 bodies, and it's only got 3 loyalty. The ultimate on this says exile the top 7 cards of your library. You may put any number of cards and or land cards from among them onto the battlefield. Not exactly the most powerful ultimate. The thing is, when you play this, it's not generally considered a great threat. It's just giving you some mana, and people don't realize is the benefit this actually gives you. So having an additional 4 mana on your turn is huge, especially when you're playing a lot of big creatures and things like that. This, when I've played it, has been the MVP of a lot of games. So I just wanted to shout this out, and it's a really cheap card, and it's mythic rarity, so just really an underrated card. All right, so that's everything for my Agatha deck that we're going to talk about today. Let's talk about my next deck, Kalain the Painter. So the first card I have here is Flaming Tyrannosaur. So Flaming Tyrannosaur is already a pretty expensive card and pretty well recognized. It's 5 and 2 red pips, dinosaur, and it's menace 5/5, but it's got an awesome ability that says whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Flaming Tyrannosaur deals 3 damage to any target, then put a 1/1 counter on Flaming Tyrannosaur. When it dies, it deals damage equal to the power to each opponent. So when I've played this, it's been awesome. So I usually, with Kalain, I'll use 3 treasures. This will come in as an 8/8. So right now it's an 8/8. So if they remove it, then immediately everybody's taking 8 damage, right? If I can play this for 7, so 7 plus 5, it's a 12/12. Everyone's taking 12 damage. The thing that makes this underrated, in my opinion, though, is the fact that it can fit into so many different deck strategies. If you're doing anything with exiled cards or impulse draw, which a lot of commander decks in red are doing, then this is going to be a powerhouse card. Every time I do a commander build, like this is one of the first cards, if it's any kind of an exile theme, and there seems to be more and more of that, and it continues to grow, this is actually probably an investment card, if I'm being quite honest. So yeah, just a great card, and one that I wanted to highlight here. Next up, we have Marionette Master. So this is actually a really popular card, but I think that most people don't think about this the same way that I do, especially in my Kalain deck. So this is a 4 and 2 black pips Human Artificer. It's got Fabricate 3. And you can, when this creature enters, put 3 1/1 counters on it or create 3 colorless servo artifacts. So even the picture shows the servos, right? So everyone typically is going to play this as a 1/3 and then get 2 1/1 servos, because of it, the additional text that says whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's powers. You can sack your 2 servos, and then you're going to do 2 damage, right? So this is an Aristocrats thing. Think about it this way. If you can put, let's say you fabricate with this, so you're going to put 3/1 counters on it, and then let's say you're in a treasure theme, and so every time you sack a treasure, now you're doing 4 damage to all your opponents. Now think about it in my Kalain deck. If I use 6 treasures, this is now a 7-10. And every time I sack a treasure, it's doing 7 damage. This could be a real powerhouse if you have ways to actually pump it up and then sacrifice artifacts. So it takes a little bit more work to do that, but this is a lot more valuable, I think, that way than it is just as an aristocrat piece. So if you're in a counter, 1/1 counter theme in black of any kind, like think about this card. All right, so that is everything for my Kalain deck. Now let's talk about the next one. All right, so now we're talking about the Admiral Beckett Brass deck I have. So the first card here is Seize the Spotlight. This is 2 in a red, and it says for each opponent, choose Fame or Fortune. For everyone who chooses Fame, you get a creature of theirs, and it gains haste until end of turn. And for everybody who chooses Fortune, you're going to get a treasure and draw a card. Everyone's going to choose Fortune. Like, it's a given. But there's 3 other people. That means you're drawing for 3 mana, you're drawing 3 cards, and you get 3 treasures. Like, that is incredible value, especially in red where draw is really hard to come by. This deck should be in everybody's red treasure deck. It should be in everybody's red anything deck, really. This should be played way more than it's seeing play right now. The next card from that deck I want to talk about is actually Breach's Eager Pillager. So this is such a flexible deck. It's 2 in a red, and all 3 modes are super relevant and super useful. And this says whenever a pirate you control attacks. This has first strike and is a 3/3. You can usually just attack with this. You're going to create a treasure, right? So when don't you want a treasure? You can target a creature, can't block this turn. So this is a crime on top of basically, you know, when you're in pirates, you're wanting to swing and hit with pirates. Usually, like I'm just thinking of Beckett Brass, you got to hit with 3 pirates. So if they have 1 creature, you can basically attack with this. That creature can't block. You have 2 other pirates. Boom. Now you got your 3. It's useful. It comes in handy, and the last one is even better. Basically, you can exile. So like, let's say your hand is gone and you just drew a land, right? So you can attack with this and then exile the top card of your library. So it's just more impulse card draw. So all 3 of these modes are relevant, and it's a really high utility card, even in a not pirate theme. Like, you don't have to have pirates because this is a pirate. So attacking with this, you're going to get to do one of those 3 things, and a card that I think too many people are sleeping on. Okay, the deck I want to talk about now is Aurelia the Law Above. So this deck is all about making creatures swing, your own creatures, making tokens, making your opponent swing, and basically, the more creatures that are attacking, the more value you get, all the way up to 5 creatures. If 5 creatures are attacking, they lose 3 life, you gain 3 life. So the first card here that I want to talk about is actually a draw card. It's Connecting the Dots. This card should be in more decks. Basically, you play this on turn 2, and every time you attack, because you're going to have tokens, you're going to attack a lot, right? So every turn you're attacking, you're going to exile a card from the top of your library. I usually just tuck it underneath here. You're going to put it face down so you don't get to see what it is. By turn 5 or 6, you're going to deplete your hand completely, and you've probably done a ton of attacking because you're in kind of a token theme. So you're going to tap 2, you're going to discard your hand, which is going to be 0, right? You sack this and you're going to draw 10 cards. What other card in Magic draws you 10 cards for 2 mana? This is a very good draw card, especially in red, because red doesn't give you real draw. So the fact that this is giving you real draw, it's just kind of like a delayed thing. I mean, it's not perfect, but you know, I'm not saying this is better than Rhystic Study or as good as Rhystic Study, but it's going to draw you more cards than Rhystic Study. There's a lot of value in this. Rhystic Study is a $60 card. I'm not saying this should be $60, but dude, this is like 10 cents. Like, this card should be played in a lot more decks, and a lot of people are sleeping on it just because it came from Karlov Manor. All right, moving on. Now we have Nelly Borka, Impulsive Accuser. This is 2 in a red and a white. It says Vigilance. Whenever she attacks, you suspect a target creature, and then you goad all suspected creatures. The key here is it doesn't say that it's of the opponent that you attack, right? So you can attack a different opponent, and then you can suspect a different opponent's creatures. So The idea here is you swing at someone who doesn't have a board, and then you suspect the biggest creature on the person with the biggest board. And that way, they can't swing that at you because suspected creatures with this are goaded. And on top of that, whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls deals damage to one of your opponents, so whenever they swing at somebody besides you, they're going to draw a card and you're going to draw a card, right? So there's even more incentive there for them not to attack you. I've always been so surprised when I've played this how much value this card gets. This is just an awesome card and one that probably should be seen play in a lot more decks. And again, it's from Karlov Manor. Too many people are sleeping on this. Great Boros card. Okay, so my Hackball deck had this card cut because this actually doesn't work with Hackball, but this was such a good card. I had to talk about it, and I think this was just a situation where I just loved the card and I was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole kind of deal. It's a 2-cost enchantment, right? Again, another Karlov Manor card, guys. There's so many good cards in this. So it's basically when it comes in for 2 mana, you draw a card right there. That's enough value. I mean, if that's all this was, it'd be okay. But then it has, you have no maximum hand size, which again, now that you have extra value, and then now it's got this third thing. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you draw more than one card this turn, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is the number of cards you draw on this turn -1. So the card that you draw at your upkeep doesn't count. But in decks where you're drawing a lot of cards and you have a creature theme, like I'm thinking of the Gregor, the Skulk guy that I just did a video on for the unpopular Azorius commanders. Gregor Shrewd Magistrate. So basically the whole idea of this deck was that it's a skull card, so like it's really hard to block. It's a 1/3, and so when you attack, you turn it sideways, and then when after blockers are declared before damage, you pump it up and you're going to draw a whole bunch of cards, and it just cares about card draw. Well, this is an awesome card for that because it's going to make all your other creatures bigger. Another video I just did was Foxglove, Mr. Foxglove. That's a deck where you're drawing a ton of cards, so it's going to make all your creatures that much bigger. So this is just a huge value card and one that I think should be in more decks because, like, just think of cards that are a lot like this would be, let's say, instead of a Commander Sphere, right? How many decks have Commander Sphere in it? Yes, that taps for mana, but this is going to give you counters instead, right? So I mean, you could slot this in a lot of different places. I think this is a card that really should see play in more decks. The next card from that deck I want to talk about, and that's another card that was cut actually, and again, I just loved both these cards. I forced them in, but let's just talk about them. So the next one here is Skullspore Nexus. It's 6 and 2 green pips, but it costs X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So it costs, if you have a 5/5, then this only costs 3. Right, so you reduce it by 5. Whenever one or more non-token creatures die, create a green fungus dinosaur creature. So that's why this got cut. There's just no synergy with Merfolk, right? So this has to be basically put into a non-tribal deck. That's probably like the one contingency. But you get a green fungus creature token with base power and toughness equal to the total power of those creatures. So even if one creature gets removed, say it's a 5/5, well now you get a 5/5 dinosaur. But think about it this way: if your board is wiped, you add up all the power of all the things that you lost, you get one dinosaur that's ginormous, right? And then on top of that, so not only is this protection from board wipes and removal and stuff like that, it also has pay to tap this and double the power until end of turn. This is awesome in anything that has green and has big creatures because you're going to get even bigger and you're going to hit for even more damage. It is slightly a win more card, but also it just has that little bit of protection in it and from removal. So I think this should be played in a lot more decks, and one that I think, again, people just missed on this one. Following that, let's talk about my Rafiq of the Many deck. So this is a Voltron deck that has elements of control. It has auras, equipment, probably my most expensive deck, one of my more powerful decks. And one of the cards that I love to play in that is Black Blade Reforged. So this is a 2-cost equipment that you equip for 3, right? I usually play this out on turn 2, and it kind of sits there until I'm ready to swing in and win with Rafiq. So it's one of those things, you get +1/+1 for each land you control. So the longer the game goes on, the stronger your creature gets, right? So this is one of those equipments that can give you +5/+5 pretty easy. And in a Rafiq deck, if I get this equipped, I'm going to win the game. And one that I think people, look at it and they go, oh, it's okay. But honestly, let's talk about some of the other big swords. Some of the other big swords, they're not doing that much work. you know, and they're seeing a lot more play, or they're wanted a lot more. I think that because this is a cheaper card, an easier card to get, that people think that it's not as good, but this sword is actually really good. All right, the last card from Rafiq I want to talk about is Pippin, Guard of the Citadel. It's a really cheap white blue 2/2, like a 15-cent card, and it's got Vigilance, Ward 1, so it's already got some built-in protection for itself. And then you can tap it, and it says another target creature you control gains protection from a card type of your choice, right? How many cards do we have that say card type, right? So you can tap this, and you can say protection from instants, protections from sorceries, protections from creatures. You can choose subtypes. You can choose anything. This basically gives you protection from anything one time. Like, this is an awesome card, and one that probably should see a lot more play in Voltron strategies and in strategies where you're trying to protect your commander. Yes, it's white and blue, so you have to have those in your commander type, but there's a lot of Bant commanders. There's a lot of, Jeskai, I guess. But this is one that I think needs to be played in a lot more decks, because I've played this and it's awesome. Every time I use it, it gets tons of value, and yeah, it's always underestimated. Great card. One last card, a little bonus card I want to give you. It's Teferi's Protection. Okay, so this isn't an underrated card. Obviously not underrated. However, there is one version of this I want to talk about. So with the new Sheldon Mannery, it was a charity event playing homage to the great Sheldon Mannery, Secret Lair, right? They did a version of this, and the version of this, the art on this is sick. It's awesome. I think it's actually better than the original. I mean, I could see the debate, like the original is pretty iconic. However, this is the cheapest version of this card that you can get. There's by far less of these, so this should be worth at least the same, if not more. It's not like it's any less playable. It's still tournament legal. The fact that you can get in on this one for $31 instead of $38 or more, like, this is the version to go get. So if you're looking to get in on this card, go out to TCG and pick this version up. I think that you will be glad you did. This is an investment. This is probably going to be a card that goes up. It was even less than this for a while, but I just wanted to kind of throw this out as like, this card is underpriced and undervalued and underappreciated. So that is the video. I hope you guys like this content. If you could give me a like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Catch you in the next one. Peace.